Hi, good morning, everyone. There's Jimmy Brown. He's about to join us in just a few minutes. Appreciate you being here with us, Jimmy. And we're gonna have him live in just a few minutes. So we're excited for that. Here's all of our friends here today. We've got Hayden, we've got Jimmy, and our illustrious producer, John, is here as well. So great to have you all here. A few things I want to talk about before we get started today. Again, great show ahead of us, and we have so many great opportunities right here at Sanctuary that we're excited to have you involved with every Sunday. By the way, people keep asking, when do you guys get together? Every Sunday, 10:30. Teach, meet, eat, pray. I put eat first because it's the most important part. I'm just saying. Anyway, we've got that coming up every Sunday. The first Saturday of every month is our gathering, and it's a big deal. We have our big worship team, and just a great time of fellowship, and then other things that are going on. And we're going to talk about Immortal Fest. The second one is coming up in just a few weeks here. We're going to spend some time talking about the first one with Jimmy here today. And Deliverance did a phenomenal job, and it was so fun to see them on stage and kind of sing along with some of the songs that we all know, and appreciate that so much. Ed, my first guest today, probably doesn't need a lot of introduction if you've been involved with Sanctuary for a while. It's my Crimson Six guy. It's our resident artist. And of course, the book. And we have some great news today that we're going to be talking about also. And let's bring him on. Are you here, Hayden? Come on.
Oh, there I am.
Yes.
Boom. Kazam.
Good to see you, dude. So
good to see you too, man.
It's an exciting day today, and one that you've worked on for a few years.
Yes. Yeah. 4 years in the making.
4 years. So here's the deal. This is all very, very good. And as you can see, it takes a lot to put all the drawings and the storyline and the layout. And there's a lot that goes into a book like this, isn't there, Hayden?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot more than I first thought there would be when I started. But yeah, because you're basically treating each page is basically made up of 5 different full drawings. So yeah.
Let's talk about the characters. You've got the Crimson Six. There's 6 characters.
Yes, sir.
And they represent some things. And why don't you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, so I always like to say this to give you the credit, but like you're the one who had the idea of making heavy metal superheroes based on different genres of metal. And so, yeah, so it's the Crimson Six, so there's 6 different characters. And so I tried to like grab the ones that I either enjoy the most or I think were the most like meaningful or iconic, like when you think of metal, you know?
Yeah.
And so, like the main leader, his name is Luke. He's just like the classic, if you think about like kind of like the Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath type of just like not any fancy names to it, but just that classic heavy metal, vintage vibe. You know what I mean? I have our glam metal guy. His name is Jackie. So he's kind of like the more like spandex suit type stuff. He has like powers of like light because he's very much like in the limelight. We have like a new metal character named Kevin or Cyber Wraith, so it's pretty cool. I thought it was pretty cool of how if you think about new metal, there's kind of that industrial techno feel to it sometimes, and so I thought it'd be cool to be like, oh, like what if his power has something to do with that? So it's the reason why he's called Cyber Wraith is because he can take control of different machines, right? Kind of like the ghost in the machine. Like he can take control and manipulate machines, which I think is pretty sweet. We got Speeding Beauty, who I think that's a pretty dope name. And she's speed metal, so like the classic speedster and just that classic like she's not like a damsel in distress. In fact, I've always kind of seen her as one of the most grounded characters. And this kind of gets into later, but one reason is because she has gone through a lot of suffering, and suffering tends to create the most grounded people. And so she's in it, and then there's Magnus, who's the black metal character, and then like just the classic giant. And on top of that, you got Ronnie, who's kind of like our main character, and he's just classic metalcore, which means that he's angsty. So yeah, those are kind of the main cast of characters.
And you know the storyline, well, for both books, and I've read the storyline in the second one too, but for both books, the storyline is just fantastic and captivating. It's hard to put it down. Tell me, what year did we publish this? I can't remember.
That was 2020. It was right in the midst of the pandemic. We published that one.
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So, but right away after you finished doing this one, you started working on the next one.
Yes, sir. Yeah, which is, I didn't expect to be making the second one, because like when we first made the first one, I just saw it as like a one-off, as just a fun like little adventure, like, oh, because I mean, because honestly, it started out feeling kind of like a gimmick, like, oh, like we're gonna make, like, the whole point is to make like a comic book based on heavy metal, and we jokingly said that the villain was going to be a pop star, right? And so, like, at first, when you first think about that, it comes off as more of like a gimmick, and like, oh, it's just gonna be a fun one-off. But then, as if if anybody here has ever been in a band or songs, like you kind of like fall in love with the story, and so like, oh, there can be more to it. And I just, I think for me, I just saw, one, I fell in love with the characters, but I saw like there was so much to be explored, but also too, I love stories as a way to kind of like process the world, if that makes sense. That sounds super artisty and super like highfalutin, but I mean, like, it feels like I just love you can explore different things through storytelling. And I just thought that with this world, there's so much for that. And I just, in my own mind, I was like processing things through stories in this world. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go straight to it. And especially with COVID, everything was, the crap hit the fan, if you know what I mean. And so, I just thought, yeah, I think it's a perfect opportunity to keep it going. And a lot of people mentioned that they wanted to see more from this world, and that they wanted to see kind of, that the first one really only barely scratched the surface. And so I was like, well, sweet, sounds good. So I started working on it that summer, and I had it written like probably a month or two after we released the first one. But there was a whole other script that I ended up scrapping, but then landed on this one. I think this one's a lot better.
Yes, I think it's awesome. So you have a great announcement today, Hayden.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so today, the second one, the Crimson Six Volume 2, is officially out on Amazon. So the print edition is officially released today. So today is, like, you heard it here first. It's officially out, 4 years in the making. I honestly think, I'm not saying this to toot my own horn, I think it's a lot better than the first one, both in story and in art. I think there's just a lot of good stuff. So yeah, that is officially out. The Kindle is yet to be determined because I ran into some issues with it. They changed a lot of things since the last time, and it's being really dumb. But other than that, very excited. It's coming out. I think it looks really good. We tried to make a cool little, if you get it, you can get this sweet little homage to Star Wars. We have a sweet little scrolling things in there. But yeah, so it's officially out today.
Very exciting. Officially out, and you can get it at, of course, Amazon. And really, honestly, wherever books are sold, if they don't have it in stock, they can order it. It goes on the queue today. And folks, by the way, if you haven't read the first one, that's the place to start. Get the first one and then get the second one. And they're awesome. And soon it'll be in the Sanctuary store as well. So
yes,
but you can get it there or Amazon or wherever the very, very, very best books are sold. That's where it's
Yeah.
at. So, Hayden, do you feel like you can take a little breather now? Can you finally rest? Of course, you got to get the Kindle version up, so you're
Right.
working on that. But this is really this has been a huge dream, and again, you've worked on it almost every day for the last 4 years.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey. I definitely I feel a big weight off, but I also feel I think anytime you're like a creative, so like if I know a lot of people who watch or have been a part of a band or things like that, right? Like anytime that you release your first thing, oh heck yeah, thanks John. Anytime that you release your very first creative thing, you tend to put a lot of your identity in it, and you tend to like put all of your hopes and dreams on it. And I think after your first one, you're able to relax for the second one. And so the second one, it's not like it has to do this well or it has to do this. And instead it's kind of like, no, I'm just doing it because it's fun and because people wanted more of it. And so whatever happens. Like, yes, I would love it to make enough to keep making them, right? But there's not as big of a weight as there was with the first one, and so I'm just able to actually like enjoy it and not feel so like stressed out constantly. It does feel good to like, I mean, I draw digitally, right? So for the past 4 years I've been looking at these pages on a computer screen, but it's so nice to like have it in my hands physically and look at it, and it's a whole different thing. But yes, I feel a huge weight of relief taken off me, and I think it's still kind of one of those things where with publishing, you're always ready for something to go wrong. You know what I mean? So there's still that, but other than that, feels great. So
yes.
Yeah.
Well, and Hayden, I'm sure that your wife is going to appreciate you being finished with the book right now too. You're not so focused on that. You might even be able to spend I don't know, a little more time with her, you think?
I mean, to be fair, I've some pretty good working boundaries already put in, so we're pretty good at that to begin with. But yes, it's one less thing to be stressed out about, which means more quality time.
Exactly, and that's a good thing. Well, folks, if you're joining us, sign in. Let us know where you're from. Jeff says, "Do you remember the 1980s band Deliverance?" And not only do we remember them, Jeff, but we have Jimmy with us in just a little bit. And Jimmy, the singer for the band. And we're going to go way back to the 80s and do a little reminiscing, which will be kind of fun too. Hayden, you also listen to all of the old bands as well as the new ones. And we've kind of had this metal journey together too, haven't we?
We sure have. Yeah, it's been great.
It has been great. And we appreciate that so much. Well, dude, I am excited for the new book. Very excited. Let's put that up once again, John, if we could, the graphic of the book. There we go. Folks, go and order that. And again, if you haven't read the first one, order both of them. So good. And again, it's in Kindle. Kindle goes frame by frame. So it's really fun to watch it on Kindle as well. But it's a great book, great storyline. And Hayden, you're awesome, dude. I'm still your biggest fan, the biggest one. Yes. Hayden, thanks so much for being here today. I appreciate it, dude.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I always love it.
So, folks, we're going to be right back in just a minute. We'll have Jimmy Brown with us here today from Deliverance, and can't wait to get to talking to Jimmy and talk about old times and new times, and let's see what he's up to. Don't go away. We'll be back right after this. And we're back with our very special guest this morning. Jimmy Brown is here with us, live and in person. Jimmy, good morning to you.
Good morning, Pastor Bob. How are you?
Now, we share, in fact, when I saw you at Immortal Fest, the first time that we saw each other was by the coffee pot.
Oh, yeah. And then the second time, too.
Well, Jimmy, it is always so good to see you, and I appreciate your friendship all of these years. Man, we've been friends for we're almost 40 years now. 40 years
Yes.
next year.
19, I met you in 84. And then we ended up actually getting to sit down and meet with you in 1985 once Deliverance had formed. But I met you right before Deliverance formed. So, yeah, it's awesome. It's been a long time over at Whittier Assembly. It's a long time ago.
Isn't it amazing that that's 40 years ago?
Oh, I know. I still can't fathom it, Pastor Bob. It just doesn't feel like it.
It doesn't, does it? Yeah, it's
No.
amazing. And Jimmy, you started Deliverance quite young. How old were you when you first started the band?
I was 15. I was 15 years old. Yeah.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, I had to ride over to Whittier from Bellflower on my scooter because I didn't have a car, So I had a little Honda Elite scooter, if you remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was red, and on the front it had the big. It was airbrushed on the front, the 666 with the cross through it, the slash through it.
Right.
I remember you commenting on that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, what a great start, though. And, Jimmy, let's go back to the very beginning of all this.
Sure.
Because those really were exciting times.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I think we had some great bands, but nobody really knew what they were doing yet. This was wasn't it? All new.
Yeah, it was all new. I mean, to a degree, we'd already seen. You've been so entrenched in the music scene for so long, Pastor Bob. But so I grew up kind of going to the, since I was like 10, that was when my family converted. So I started going to the Calvary Chapel shows because that's where all the music shows were. So right. I'd go to Costa Mesa or I'd go to Downey.
Yes.
Whatever I could bum a ride from somebody to. And I started seeing bands like Daniel Amos and Resurrection Band and Servant and Petra. And, that was kind of the core beginning of it all. But I think once Stryper hit the scene in 83, 84, all that. I was 83. I saw them at Downey, at Calvary Downey. And I was like, okay, something different here is happening. These guys are taking what Rez and DA and all these other bands have been doing for all these years and Servant and they have moved it 12 notches up.
Yeah, different. Yes.
And I knew, number one, I knew, we're not going to be seeing these guys at Calvary Downey very much anymore. And I was right. I think like 5 months later, they were headlining the Santa Monica Civic. Yes. And they just took off. And I remember seeing you at the Santa Monica Civic show, if I'm not mistaken. But because that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think Steve Valdez and a bunch of other people were there too. It was a big deal. And then of course TBN was there with their cameras rolling for their video show. Yes. So I knew right then something different was happening. And then I remember you and I talking, and you said, keep your eyes, peeled for a new band that's coming around called Barren Cross. And so I went to go see them at Calvary Downey. They played a show there.
And I was at that show too.
Yeah. So it's like, man, it was an exciting time because it was so new for metal. And, like I said, we had DA, we had Steve Taylor, we had, Carmen, we had Petra, we had Barnabas, but it was like, this was something different and it felt different. The energy behind it was completely different.
Yeah. And
that's when we knew, okay, if God can use a donkey to talk, he could use this. So
Now, Jimmy, when did you first realize that you had a voice for metal? Because your voice is not necessary. Well, you can do rock and roll, but you got the perfect voice for metal. When did you know that?
Oh gosh, it's funny, Pastor Bob. They tried to, even though I started Deliverance and I brought all these other guys. Remember, I was 15, so everybody else was 21, 22 years old. And they tried to replace me. Every band member that came in tried to replace me as a vocalist. They didn't want me singing because they thought I sounded like a mouse when I sang. And it was kind of funny. But I always knew that if I'm writing these lyrics, I've got to sing them. Whether I sound like Mickey Mouse or not, I've got to sing them. And so that's kind of where it went. But I think just as we started to progress and do more shows, in fact, I remember, Pastor Bob, the first time we played the Whiskey, you were there and you saw me out in the alley behind the Whiskey, and you said, well, what are you doing out here? And I said, they won't let me in the club because I'm 15. So I could only go in there to play. That's it.
Wow. Isn't
Yeah.
that so you could play, but you couldn't be in the club? That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. It was that way when we played the Troubadour, the Whiskey, the Roxy, Gazzari's. Every time we played shows, unless it was an all ages show, I couldn't go in there. And it was a strange time, man. It was just really weird. And then, but then we started dreaming about playing the Knott's Berry Farm Jubilee and the Disneyland Jubilee shows. And do you remember those?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, those were fun. And like I said, it was such a thriving, huge time. But we were excluded. Oh, there we are. But I think that's at Immortal Fest last year. But yeah, we were being excluded, and I think that's where I know when you stepped in, and one of the first things that we did was the Metal Mardi Gras. Remember that? Yes. I know you have to remember that.
1987. Yes.
Yeah, because we needed our own venue because. The only reason they let Stryper play one of those Jubilee nights was because they were so popular. They couldn't say no to them, right? But the rest of us were being shunned, and I think Barren Cross got to play once. So,
and I remember, I think that opened up a lot of doors, didn't it? That particular festival, and I remember the day when the promoters of the Knott's Berry Farm thing called me and asked me if I would co-host the event with Brian Duncan.
That's right. Yeah.
Together. And I remember it was New Year's Eve. We did the countdown from the top of a building in the rain, standing in water with microphones in our hands. Yeah. We were probably going to die. And I led the prayer and Brian led a song, and we had these thousands of people down below as we lit up the new sign for the new year. But I think that did open up a lot of doors. And if I remember correctly, didn't you guys play the Knott's Berry Farm thing then?
No, we never got to.
Really? I remember Barren Cross was playing that night, and there were a few others. I thought it was you. Huh.
No, yeah, it was I think it was Barren Cross, and I think Servant played.
Okay.
I think Servant played, but no, we didn't. And I remember for sure Stryper playing one of those, but it wasn't very many opportunities for us. That's why Metal Mardi Gras was such an important festival for
really was
the bands like us, Vengeance, and Soldier from Northern California. Groups like that. Just all these bands that never had a chance to play anything big. And Metal Mardi Gras opened up the doors, and then for other festivals that came, if you remember all those Fontana, San Bernardino concerts, like his festival and Metal Midnight, they all came and followed the footsteps of what we did over in Long Beach at the Metal Mardi Gras.
Yes, yeah, some great festivals after that, and then of course internationally, what you have done as well. So. Yeah, it was really fun to be involved in the groundbreaking of all that as you were. So that
Yeah.
those are good times. And it just, sometimes it seems like 40 years, Jimmy, and sometimes I can't believe it's been that long.
Oh, I know. I'm still, other than waking up and seeing the wrinkles and the white hair, and I mean, I don't feel like I've been doing this for 40 years. It just doesn't feel like it. But when I start going back, and especially me and Larry Farkas are recording a lot right now. I'm doing a solo project called Novella, and Larry and I are writing together for the first time since 1986. Awesome. And of course, Larry, we split off from Deliverance to start Vengeance, or to be part of Vengeance rather. Right. And then we ended up doing shows together. And like I said, from all these splits, boom, 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 the movement grew. And I just didn't think that we thought it was going to reach pinnacle status when we saw POD on, just headlining world tours. I mean, we just had no idea that we were going to be credited. I saw an interview with Marco, and he credited Deliverance, Vengeance, The Crucified, all the bands that started way back when.
Yes.
And we're talking what, 85, 84, 86, 87, that was a pinnacle influence. And I never thought of Deliverance and Vengeance and Sanctuary and Crucified as opening doors for these guys, but they credit us for that. And last year's Immortal Fest, when Kevin from Disciple went out there, and he said it not once, not twice, but 3 times from the stage. If it wasn't for Deliverance, I've been hearing their songs in my head for the last 30 years. And boy, I'm not going to lie though, Pastor Bob, when he said that, I just immediately grew a long white beard in my head. It's like, God, 30 years he's been listening to us.
Exactly. But those were such iconic days. Now, we were the heavy metal church, and then Set Free was the motorcycle church.
That's right. The bikers.
And Phil Aguilera and I are still good friends after all these years. Phil started.
Oh, right on.
But we would send bands back and forth.
Yes.
And he actually came from his church. And I believe that one of their very first concerts was in Sanctuary. And I remember after the concert, Jim Laverty pulling me aside and saying, Bob, we really have to screen the bands a little more because this band was very good.
Which band was that?
Yeah, that was Jim Laverty and POD. Yeah.
Oh, was it POD? Oh, that's funny. That was a long time ago, though. What they started, I think, in the 90s, right? Because they were younger than us.
It was actually in the 80s.
Oh, and wow.
One of their first concerts. And I just remember, Jim saying that to me, but you never know what's going to take off. And Jimmy, honestly, and I'm not just saying this because you're sitting here, but you've always had one of my favorite voices. It's
thank you.
To me that you had band members that thought you needed to be replaced, because I've always thought that you had the perfect voice for metal.
Thanks, Pastor Bob.
but I'm just reading some of the comments that are coming in, as you see, all over the world, and I think there's a whole lot of people that agree with me on that as well.
I appreciate it.
So 40 years, Jimmy, is amazing, and we all do little side hustles and little work on the side to bring in finances, but this has been your life, most of your life.
Oh yeah. I mean, we took a break for a while because obviously my family was growing, and if you remember, Pastor Bob, when you were at our wedding, of course, and you played the organ.
Yes.
And it was so funny. I'll never forget that day because you as the people were coming into the sanctuary, you were playing the piano, and I remember asking you, aren't you going to play the organ? And you're like, Jimmy, I never really play organ. I was just planning on playing the piano. I'm like, please play the organ. And you did. You got out there and you fired up that B3, man. So, but, you know, I remember those times and thinking to myself, gosh, you know, so we had Deborah not but a year later. And then we just had our one child. So at that time, Deliverance was taking off and doing our thing. We got signed to Intense and we were starting to tour.
Yeah.
But then by 94, our second daughter came, Annika. And then when Annika came, that's when it started getting a little rough for the metal bands by 94, 95, because grunge had taken over.
Yes.
And we were, I don't know how all of a sudden metal became a dirty word. And nobody wanted to be associated with metal anymore, you know? And we put out a record called Camelot, which was right before the band kind of dissolved. Mm-hmm. And that record just didn't do well. And I remember Frontline, Jimmy Kempner, they were just like, we were really hoping it was going to sell, but it didn't. So bye, you know, and they dropped us. But I didn't know they were in financial trouble too at the time. Right. And they dumped a considerable amount of money into the record. And so that's when we kind of just disappeared into the limelight, out of the limelight rather. And then, I just concentrated on working and doing the family thing and all of that until I think it was you and Doug Van Pelt called me in 2000 because you guys were putting together a show out at Cornerstone, a reunion of all the metal bands, right? Mm-hmm. And so we came back and we did that. But by that time, I'm not going to lie, I was so entrenched in the work world at this point. I was like, yeah, I don't know if I could like leave a stable paycheck to go back to the uncertainty of being an artist again. And so it was a tough time, but I still continued to put out albums. I still continued to do Deliverance, and as well as my other projects, Fearful Symmetry and Jupiter 6, which you invited Jupiter 6 to play that California Cornerstone.
Yes. I remember.
And I'll never forget, Pastor Bob. I don't know if you remember, but you walked up to me and you go, Jimmy, are you going to play All Day and All of the Night? That's my favorite Kinks song. And I said, yes, we're going to play that song today. I promise you. And I had to go to the band and I told them, it's not on the set, but we got to put the song in the set. Pastor Bob wants to hear it. So we played it.
All day, and all of the night.
Oh, great song. Such a fun song.
Yeah, totally. Yes.
Yeah. So we, you know, but I didn't really start thinking about, you know, at that point now, again, I was pretty entrenched in the casino business. I was growing in casino marketing and doing my thing. And I went from being a host to an executive casino host. Then I flew out to Alabama, took a director's position out there. And I was I was working two properties at once, and it just started getting tougher and tougher, Pastor Bob. I wasn't seeing my family. I was working 14, 15 hours a day, 6 days a week. Yeah. It was just getting rougher and rougher. And I woke up one day and I just had some sort of strange epiphany. I don't know what it was, but I woke up and I literally said, I can't do this anymore. I am robbing people. And even though I'm not putting a gun to their head and making them gamble, I am in charge of writing the slogans that go on the billboards that say, you can win. And, you know, pushing this intangible dream, because that's the thing. You're just telling them it's the only business in the world where you could literally take people's money and not give them anything back.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, it just hit me. It hit me. And I said, I can't do this anymore. And it led me down a strange path that I didn't know where I was going to go. And I started seeing this one counselor, and she was so wonderful. And she just told me, you know, if money was no issue. Money was no, we got to just eradicate the idea of money.
Yes.
What would you want to do?
Great question.
And I said, my first love, music. That's what's always driven me inside. And it's been dead in me for so long. And now I want to see it come back. And she said, well, then, and she wanted to talk to Helen and asked Helen, would you be okay now that the kids are grown? And they're out of the house. Is it okay? Do you think you would be okay with Jimmy pursuing music again, even though it's going to be harder than when he was younger, And she said, yes, I just want him happy. And I just started doing music again. I opened a Patreon, and actually I didn't open it. A fan in France, who was a photographer out there, she ended up opening that Patreon account for me, sent me the passwords, told me, okay, it's time for you to grow your base. And I had no idea what Patreon was. And so she taught me about it. I got into it, and lo and behold, I'm here doing music again. And it's not lucrative, but it pays some of the bills, Pastor Bob.
Yes. And dude, speaking of Helen,
Yeah,
I'm one of her biggest fans. You've married well, and she's just been so supportive and such a great helpmate to you, hasn't she? She's awesome.
Oh gosh, yeah, she is. I wrote a song on the River Disturbance album called "You Still Smile," and one of the lines in there that said, if there had been any with a Christ-like spirit, it was you for me. And that's exactly what Helen has always been to me. She's always had that Christ-like spirit of always there, always with a hand of a smile there for you, a hug, care, but also admonishment when you need it. And also, it's like a slap in the face, hey, time to get up, to get away from this depression or get away from this attitude. She's been there every which way. And
yes, she has.
I'm telling you, it's kind of strange. I met Helen in '83, so I've known her for 41 years.
Wow, that's amazing. And you were both kids.
Yeah, we were just best friends. We were just best friends, and then here, 41 years later, we're still together, hanging out. We still laugh, we still talk and mess around, and it just just like when we were younger, it's all the same. And she loves you. She always sends her love. She was bummed that she couldn't come to Immortal this year, but it happened to fall on the same date as our granddaughter's birthday, and she had already planned to spend the week with our granddaughter. And so, but she she always sends her love.
And give her a big hug for me too.
Oh, of course. It's funny, think about that, Pastor Bob. When I first met you, Helen was with me then. And then last year at Immortal, when Helen and I were there at the coffee machine, here we are all three together 40 years later.
I know. That's so awesome. And Jimmy, I know you agree that one of the priceless things in life are the friendships that you carry through from decade to decade.
Absolutely.
You to be friends. And it doesn't mean that you've always agreed with everything. It doesn't mean that there haven't been ups and downs in the friendship. It doesn't mean that there isn't every friendship goes through that. But the ones that stay, the ones that are still there after so many years, the ones where when you see the other person, your heart leaps and you're glad to see them. And I appreciate that part. And we're both a little older now. I'm a lot older, but we're both a little older now. And I think the older you get, the more you appreciate the friends that have been with you for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's part of what makes Immortal so special. Because we're seeing all these people we have not seen in so long. And I was hanging out with Jim Laverty backstage this particular Immortal Fest. And it was just so weird. We were looking at each other and going, God, we've known each other for exactly 40 years because I first introduced myself to Jim back in 1984.
Yes.
And we became friends then, and we always dreamed about playing with Barren Cross. I told him, when I start a band, I want to open up for you guys, and here we are laughing all these 40 years later and talking about we should do a tour, Barren Cross, Deliverance, and I'm like, man,
Yeah.
book it and I'll be there.
Exactly. I'd love that. That would be fun. So, yeah, it's amazing, and it's amazing looking at all of these years later, and just still being really great friends. Let's talk about Immortal Fest for a minute, because
Sure.
I mean that just has to be such a. It's not so much about the music; it's about the family, isn't it?
It's community. It's all about community and family. Exactly.
Yes, which is one of the high points of Immortal Fest, or any festival where we have been involved with starting a lot of festivals around the world, and it's really cool to for people from every country come and they're part of it, and it's interesting that wherever you go, even though the language might be a little different, the hearts and the family part of it are exactly the same everywhere. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, gosh, we meet people from all over the world there.
Yes. Yes.
And I just met a bro from Costa Rica who was there when we were there. And I even met a cat that flew in from the Netherlands. And I was like, wow, man, you flew in just for this. That is just so awesome, but
Yes.
it's a collective. But if you remember, though, Pastor Bob, we had the same experiences at Metal Mardi Gras. We had the same experiences at his fest. People flew in from everywhere, which shows it's a community, it's
Yes.
family. And just like you fly in for a family reunion, it's the same idea, and it's just great, And I love that about Immortal. When I first heard about it,
Yes.
I was like, oh, well, that's sad Deliverance wasn't invited, but it's okay. Everybody, I have a love-hate relationship with promoters. You know that because I'm so outspoken. But then the second year I got an invite and told Steve, yeah, we'd love to come play. And then when he invited us again for this year, and then hopefully we'll play next year. I mean, it's funny when I first got hit up, I was talking to a cat named Dorn on Facebook, and I told him, well, this is Pastor Bob's, right? Because I couldn't imagine anybody else putting on something like this. I thought it was through Sanctuary, and he said, no. He goes, but Bob is involved. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, then cool. Yeah, we'll do it if we're invited.
Thank you. Good. And Dorn's an interesting character. He really is. Great guy.
Oh, he is. He's been around for a long time, man. He's been involved with this scene for quite a bit.
Time. Let's talk about the band lineup for a minute, because it always just does my heart good to see you and George on the stage. You guys have been doing music for a while, but he's not the only one that's been with you for a while.
Oh gosh. So we've got, of course, and it's no secret, George and I have had a very tumultuous relationship that's it's two brothers that are, we love each other with great passion, but we also fight a lot with each other.
Yeah.
And so we've had our years. In fact, I think you've had to settle some disputes between he and I several times. But like you said, friendships matter. And look at George and I met in '85 when I went to go see Prophet with him and Roger and Steve DeRock and So I met George way back when, and then we started working together in '89 after Glenn departed over there at Departed Deliverance.
Yeah.
And so George and I effectively had been real good friends since '89. And like I said, ups and downs, rocky roads, and then we hit peaks and valleys, and it's all good because, like I said, we still hug each other's necks, and we still get very happy when we jam with each other and play with each other. That's not me and that's me and Glenn. There's a better picture of me and George I sent John. I think I sent it to you, but that's all right.
Yeah.
That's when I had a bald head, Pastor Bob. Because my hair's been thinning, and I thought to myself, I might as well just shave it and see what it's going to look like when it completely goes.
We've all tried many different hairstyles over the years, haven't we?
Gosh, yes. But so with George, like I said, it's just wonderful that our friendship is still thick, and so we're together and we're playing and we're having fun. You could see the dynamic, especially on stage. There's a lot of dynamic between me and George. And then Manny Morales joined Deliverance back in 1985 when we first started.
Right.
And then we split apart, and then we came. I'm sorry.
What a great guy! I love.
Oh,
him.
Manny, yeah, Manny's good people. Yeah,
yeah.
And he split off from us for a little while, but then he came back to in '92, and he's been pretty much with me ever since.
Yes.
And then Jim Chaffin and I met each other in 1985 out in Fresno
when he was crucified.
Yes, he was playing with the Crucified, which they became probably my favorite band in all of the Christian metal punk thrash scene,
Yes.
And so we started hanging out with each other at that point, even though he was in Fresno, I was in Los Angeles. And but whenever we had a lull, like when Chris broke his ankle, we called Jim. And, when Chris bailed out on our tour and just couldn't tour anymore, he had to go home and be with his family, we called Jim. So Jim's been an unofficial member of Deliverance since around 86, 87, but he officially joined in 2015. And I couldn't be any happier because
absolutely.
Jim and I are brothers,
Yes. And dude, he is still one of my favorite drummers. He is amazing. Yeah.
He's got a style, doesn't he?
Yeah, he totally does. Yes.
Yeah.
But he's
I just love his style. And then we just got a brand new guy named Dan Corona who Manny found out out there in Austin, Texas. And Dan is he's an incredible guitar player. He's a great singer. And he's been a joy to add to the scene. There you go. There's a picture of us all. He's just been amazing and a nice addition to what we're doing. What's funny about that picture that's showing right there, Pastor Bob, I was trying to get back up and my knee gave out and I fell backwards right into the monitors. Oh, it's funny.
The stories we could tell, Jimmy, right?
Oh, there's so many. And then we want to get my solo thing going live with Larry, because Larry is itching to get back on the stage.
Awesome. Yes, and he needs to.
Oh, that's a talent that has, to me, not been wasted, but it's been in hibernation for way too long.
Yes.
And when he did the Blood Good thing a few years back, remember he played with Les Carlson in Blood Good, and that was extraordinary. And it was like, okay, now it's time for you to come back, Larry. But of course, Larry was full-time caregiver to his brother.
Yeah, Elmer.
And, Elmer, exactly. And sadly, Elmer passed in October.
Right.
I'm happy for him because he's home now and no more suffering, But so Larry and I have been playing and recording now for several years, because it's so funny. When I moved back to Las Vegas in 2018, he moved within 6 months. He moved back, and we didn't realize how close we were to each other. And then we just started getting together, and it just started happening. And so Larry and I are doing that, but he wants to hit the stage, especially seeing all these videos of us, with Deliverance. He's like, man, I want to get out there and want to play, and I'm like, okay, well, let's see about. We'll try to get some bookings for the solo stuff. It's not as popular, but we'll get it out there. We love what we've been doing. So,
awesome.
But man, all these friendships, like you said, for over years. Because think about it, I've known Manny since I was 15. I've met George when I was 15. Met Jim when I was 15.
Yes.
Met Larry when I was 15 because he was our first guitar player. I mean, my gosh.
Look who joined us here, Glenn Rogers.
Oh, Glenn Rogers. Well, now Glenn.
Yeah.
So Glenn came in in '87, and I gotta tell this story because it's funny. In fact, I remember there's Jim Laverty's on.
Right.
But so I don't know if you remember this. Yeah, I know you do. Actually, I know you remember. But so I heard about you guys had hooked up with the Pachyderm Brothers, and you guys were recording an album called California Metal.
Yes.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, I get a call from you, and you call me at my folks' house, and hey, would you guys come down and consider doing a couple of tracks for this California Metal? I said, I thought you guys were using Vengeance, but I guess the Elefante brothers were so freaked out by Roger's voice, and
yes. And I was too.
Yeah, everybody was,
Right.
So they were like, yeah, we're not going to record those guys. So, but you wanted the thrash genre represented.
Yes.
And so when I came and I saw, okay, we got Barren Cross, we got Neon Cross, and we've got Guardian, and it's like, boy, we're going to be the odd men out. So, but that's okay. And at that point, we were in between guitar players, so we just came in as a 3-piece and recorded Attack. And I remember John and Dino Elefante sitting down with me, and Dino just loved it because he was like, God, you're a little kid, he was like, you're 15 years old or 16 years old, you're a little kid. And but he goes, this is great. He goes, so do you have a melodic song that you could put on this? Because I don't want too aggressive songs like this, Yeah. And so we put A Space Called You on there, because that was when you told Dino, this kid can sing. He doesn't just do the grunting. He can sing. No, and so we recorded that. And well, when we finished recording that, I asked, well, who else is on the album? And they said, oh, there's a new band called Hero.
Yes.
And then you told me, oh, that's Robbie Braun's new band, because he's not with Holy Soldier anymore. And I'm like, oh, okay. And that's when I met Glenn Rogers.
Yes.
And then Glenn told me, oh yeah, I play more thrash than I do this kind of music, oh man, I'm not gonna lie, right away I went to work on stealing them from Robbie. It was all musical chairs back then with all the players, if you remember,
And I'll never forget that first meeting at Pachyderm Studios.
Yeah.
Where we all sat, all the representatives, all the band sat in the studio, I think it was the front office of the studio.
Yes.
And we had this dream. Let's put together, and I think the whole idea was to see what would sell, what people liked, what albums should we record, all of that, and it was very definitive. But California Metal 1 and 2, and East Coast Metal and Ultimate Metal, and all of those really helped to define the movement, didn't they?
Oh, completely. I mean, I completely credit our appearance on Cal Metal to even putting Deliverance on in the ears of people all over the world.
Yes.
Because we were voted, if you remember, Regency told us that we were voted the most popular band on Cal Metal 1.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, really? I mean, I was in shock because, I mean, when I first put on the record and hear Deadlock, I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, that's like the best song Barren Cross ever did. It's like, it was so amazing. And Mike Drive's voice, and well, he was Mike Lee back then, right? But
right.
But man, you hear that, and then I think the next song was like Guardian, and I loved Paul Crowley's voice, back, listening to him sing back then. Yes. And the Neon Cross, which Dave, I mean, my gosh, man, Dave had that Robert Plant, but with super uber power,
Right. Yes.
Just, it was so cool. So for me, I felt like a dorky little kid, Pastor Bob, compared to all these guys. I was just shocked. I was shocked that anybody was wanting to listen to us. But you believed in us, and I always appreciated that.
Well, I guess of course I believed in you, but you've always been one of my favorite singers, honestly, Jimmy. And
No,
I'm not just saying that because you're sitting here. You really have been.
no, you've said that.
But there are people that I guess that inspire you, with their voice,
Sure.
and you've always been one of those to me. But not just to me, but a couple generations of people now, which is,
Oh yeah.
one of the blessings for me in going to Immortal Fest and then all the festivals around the world is that they're really, in many ways, family events. Fathers
Oh, yeah.
and sons coming together, and the fathers listen to some of the old melodic, and the sons have kind of progressed, and some of them are a little more black metal and death metal and different forms, new metal, but they appreciate where they've come from. They know Deliverance. They know that that's Dad's favorite band. I grew up listening to them, and that's a comment that I hear from so many of the younger kids. Dude, I grew up listening to Deliverance. I grew up.
I know it.
Yeah.
It's so strange, isn't it? I met a girl who she said, my dad started me on you guys back when I was 3 years old. And she goes, here I am 25. I'm like, wow. I thanked the dad and said, dude, good job raising your kids.
Yeah, exactly. That's true, isn't it?
That's pretty awesome.
So it's so much fun to reminisce, and there have been so many great years of music. But
yeah,
the most important part of all of this, and I know you agree, is that we have had an incredible opportunity to present the good news of Jesus Christ in a whole different way.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And so many people that have responded to the message and that are Christians because of bands like Deliverance.
Yeah.
And at Immortal Fest, you hear all the stories. And you hear the stories like, I became a Christian at a Deliverance concert or whatever. Yeah. Jimmy, that story never gets old, does it?
No. I open emails every single day. And it, if you allow it, it can be a blur, because the stories are all so similar.
Yes.
But it's so beautiful that when you actually stop, and I really, emails are great and I appreciate them. Don't get me wrong. I know it's technology, but I used to really love reading the handwritten fan mail that came through, because think about the time it took to sit down, write something, put it in, fold it, put it in an envelope, lick the envelope, grab a stamp, lick the stamp, put it on there and put it in the mail,
Yeah. Yes.
That was somebody's heart really going into something. And just to say thank you. If I didn't hear the song No Time, I was going to kill myself. And I was literally at the brink of suicide. And I heard this song and it changed everything for me. And you hear a story like that and you just go, well, this is why it happened. This is why Deliverance happened.
Yeah.
And I know as an artist, you get tired of being labeled, or you get tired of being criticized, or you get tired of this, or you get tired of that. And you want to sometimes just do your art and not have to try to repeat the same thing over and over and over. But the biggest thing that we can say about, I always call the first 4 years of Deliverance the ministry years.
Yes.
And the reason being is because we weren't out to try to get a record deal. We weren't playing the Whiskey and the Troubadour and all those clubs in the Sunset Strip to get recognized or to get a record deal or anything. We were there to preach the gospel.
Yes. That's right.
And if you remember, they all called me the Jimmy Swaggart. I don't know how much of a compliment that is now, but they called me the Jimmy Swaggart of metal.
Yeah.
And now I sometimes look at that and go, yeah, maybe it was too close to the curb there, but no. But You know, what it was is I didn't care raining down fire and brimstone during our shows, man, because it had to happen the way it did. The music was aggressive, so the message had to be just as aggressively presented.
That's right.
And we got so much respect out of it because, I mean, bands like, Dark Angel and Viking, I knew a lot of them were friends with Glenn, but they were continuing to see us without Glenn when Glenn had stepped down and moved on to some other things. But they continued supporting us and supporting Deliverance because for them, they respected the fact that, you know what, these guys are Christian, but they're not stuffed shirts. They're not weirdos in their head, and they're not going to not want to hang out with us because they're Christian and we're not. But they respected the fact that we were very militant with our message.
Yes.
But we also were very, very careful to preach the gospel of peace.
Yeah.
And just to let people know that, Jesus loves you. That was the core of what we were. And yes, years later, you go through the art years. You're like, oh, well, not all the Psalms are about the Lord. And sometimes there's just some nice songs here about that or this or that. And again, that's all good and wonderful. And it's great to be an artist. And I'm very thankful that gift has been bestowed upon me. But yes. I can't forget the initial reasoning behind why I was given this gift to begin with, and had that fire in me that was burning to get on a stage. And those first 4 or 5 years were they were, for lack of a better word, Pastor Bob, they were just magical, Yes. And I really, really appreciated what was being done through all of us. And it wasn't just Deliverance. It was every band at that time. Mentioning, I just brought up Neon Cross and Dave Perdue. He was a fire preacher, he was just like,
still is
the show. Yeah. He was a beast on the stage. And not only as a singer, but a preacher. And Baron Cross, Jim, I still remember to this day, Jim having that big Bible and breaking it out right in the middle of the set, and talking to the crowd. So yeah, those early years were pinnacle. And I believe that's why God had such a nice, beautiful hand of blessing on what the scene was at that time, because it was pure. It was real. We weren't out to make money.
Because we didn't.
Yeah. Well, some people did. Frontline? No. Intense.
Yeah. Yeah. We could go there, huh?
Yeah, we can. But that's all right. It's okay. That at least they, when all was said and done, I guess they didn't put on a pretense that they were there for ministry. They were a business, so they had to make money, I guess.
But
although I always wanted to ask you, what happened to Bottom Line Records? Why didn't that ever take off?
I just kind of felt like we didn't need to. Because there were so many other companies. And just to be honest with you, Jimmy, a few years ago, there were a bunch of us that got together. A lot of us that felt like we had some responsibility with the whole Christian rock, industry. Yeah. And, John Stills was there, and Doug Van Pelt was there, and Glenn Kaiser, and there were a bunch of us that we all met at Charlie Peacock's house, and just spent the day in prayer and fasting. And at the end of the day, we felt like God told us to walk away from it. And I really have, for the most part. There are very few people in the industry that I trust because I have way too much experience with it. And you understand that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's a whole lot of it that isn't godly in any way. So I just kind of felt like we have to get to a place, and things are done differently. You can do an album with a record company these days easily.
You don't need to. Yeah.
And we're about to do that again. But I really feel like, to be dedicated to our craft and to be dedicated to Jesus Christ moving through our craft, there has to be not just our motives have to be right, but they have to be pure. And and to surround yourself with people who have a different motive it's not the right path.
Yeah.
And I know you know that more than anybody. So
well, we've met some interesting characters along the way, haven't we?
Yeah. And you've met a lot of interesting characters, including me. So you know, it's interesting. We always talk about, the people that are still standing, the people that are still here, the people that are still serving the Lord, the people that are still faithful to the movement. But, I always think, isn't the greatest thing that God is still faithful with us?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
In spite of us, in spite of, gosh, I look back at Sanctuary all these almost 40 years, and I think I've made so many mistakes, so many things I wish I would have known better, wish I would have done better, wish I would have been more in tune with God's leading and not so much in the flesh. Or, you have all of that. And yet at the end of all of that, Jimmy, God is faithful with us. I love that.
Well, what always brought me a lot of comfort was Abraham was, if you read into it I remember talking to you about the humanity of Christ, and I love painting flesh and blood on every person mentioned in the Bible, because they were flesh and blood. Yeah.
Right.
But I think of Abraham, and such a flawed guy in so many ways. He wasn't perfect.
Yes.
And yet he was called the friend of God.
Yes. Yes, I love that.
And to me, that shows that God isn't looking for perfection. He just wants to love you.
Yeah, and Abraham and David, such a good example too.
David, Moses. Look at Moses. I love that passage where God actually, decides, what, I'm going to go kill him. I'm done with this guy. Because Moses used to just anger him. And it's funny. I tell people about that scripture. They're like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's in there. Read it." And his wife intervenes, in the story. And but think about that. God's like, here's this dude chosen to lead his people, and God's like, yeah, I'm done with this dude. I'm bumming him out. That's it. He's gone. And the wife intervenes. Good things are happening, but yet we know that God loved Moses and called him to do a work. But Moses was kind of a jerk in some regard, because if you look at it, he was constantly telling God, I don't talk very good. Let my brother do the talking. Yeah. Are you sure about this? This, that, and the other thing. And but I will say this. I read an interesting thing years ago that I thought was probably one of the most beautiful things, because, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I gotta say this. So I started studying Judaism very heavily for many years, sat under a rabbi and went through the whole shebang, and got into the mystical sect of Kabbalah and everything else. But but there was a portion of this scripture, because I never understood why God, because Moses struck the rock twice.
Yes.
That the Lord said, that's it. You ain't going into the land of milk and honey. You're not going into the promised land. I'm going to let them all go, and you're done. All because he struck a rock twice. And that really disturbed me. That story has always bothered me. And when I was going over this with my Rebbe, he pulled out a text and said, read this. And what it was is that God had something special planned for Moses, because Moses, when he was when he was burying, when his brother was going to die, if you remember, Aaron, what did Moses tell him? At least you have a brother to bury you, because with you gone and Miriam gone, I'm not going to have any family to bury me.
Yes.
And God heard that. God heard the human man, Moshe, say, I don't have anybody to bury me. And so that whole thing that seemed like God was being a big meanie was actually a big plan, because and the passage that I read said, and it came to pass that Moses the man had died, and God buried him himself. Yahweh buried Moses and wept because his friend had died. And it's like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I read that and then it made sense, Pastor Bob. It made sense. Why it looked like he was being a big meanie, but no, he had already heard way back that, he was bummed because he has nobody to bury. Well, guess what? I'm going to bury you. I'm going to take care of you. And even though the man, but see, that was, I think in the Hebrew, I loved that it said Moshe, the man, had died, because obviously his spirit moved on and obviously he was going to be in communion with the Lord, but God was missing the flawed little human being.
Yes.
So God loves us. The human, the flawed human.
And Jimmy, and that's us.
Yeah.
Flawed, not able to stand on our own, best intentions. I always say, going up like a rocket and down like a rock. We do that. And yet God sent his only son to die for us.
Yeah.
While we were still sinners.
While we were yet sinners, it says.
I love that. Jimmy, I have a feeling we could go on for hours and talk.
We can, but I know you got another show to do.
Yeah, but we will again. And please come back and let's talk some more. Let's do that.
Anytime, Pastor Bob. All you got, like I said, the minute I got the invite from John, I was like, anything for Pastor Bob, man.
Thank you. Well, and Jimmy, thank you for being a great friend all these years. It really is
always
good to see you. And
right back at you, Pastor Bob.
Looking forward to working with you a whole lot more in the future. We're not done yet.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
We're not.
We still have some great days to go. Jimmy, thank you. God bless you. Please give a big hug to Helen for me.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, folks, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you being here. Appreciate Jimmy and Hayden from joining us today. And don't forget, every Wednesday we have the show going here. Great guests and great time together, but especially a great time with the Lord together as well. Folks, if you want to get a hold of us, right on the screen there, sanctuaryinternational.com is our website, and you can use that as a jumping off place to find all of the different things that Sanctuary is doing. But thank you for joining me. And folks, don't forget, you are blessed. So go and be a blessing.
Hey everybody, Glenn Kaiser. I just wanted to say, if you enjoyed this particular edition of Sanctuary Live, hit the subscribe button. And recognize too, you can follow on all the different platforms for Sanctuary Live. You can find all sorts of things and grow and grow. And by the way, the beauty of all of this is that we can do it loud, because we're metal and we're family.